Welcome back into Before the Hedges, presented by Kroger. My name is Brandon Adams. It is great to have Jeff Sintel back in our Dog Nation World Headquarters studios after some time in Orlando and San Antonio. Recruiting trail has been wild, but then you come back to the state of Georgia and it's even wilder. Jim Chaney on his way to Tennessee. Great reporting from you this morning at DogNation.com that Georgia offensive line coach Sam Pittman will not be joining him there. This has been certainly a hectic time around Dog Nation over the last few days.
Goodness gracious. This is what I say with my kids a lot. I say that goodness gracious a lot now. 2019, man, as far as news and the Georgia Bulldog program and Dog Nation, and maybe some tiny little ulcers for a lot of folks about gray hairs or stress, 2019 is definitely bringing it for Dog Nation.
So let me set the stage for the rest of the show, and then we'll get into the main topic at hand. Later on, we have a very fascinating interview for you to see with a five-star defensive lineman, or I should say outside linebacker now, nation's #1 prospect, Nolan Smith. Great conversation that Jeff Sintel had with him. You'll see that in its entirety today on Before the Hedges, presented by Kroger. We'll also get some more behind-the-scenes inside scoop on what led four-star defensive back Tyreke Stephenson to choose UGA, and some of the best of moments from the Under Armour All-American game, the All-American Bowl in San Antonio. You'll get all of that this afternoon here on Before the Hedges, and it's great to have all of you with us. But, as you said, let's dive into the big topic here, which is the fact that by now people know Jim Chaney is going to Tennessee. But as I was live last night here on the Dog Nation video channels, the major question that Georgia fans seem to have was not what Chaney's status was, because, listen, we've now covered it a lot, that Chaney's not popular with everybody, nor is he the favorite assistant coach of really anyone, but Sam Pittman, his good friend, is. You go back to 2016, the reason why Chaney's here is because Kirby Smart wanted Sam Pittman, and Pittman liked the idea of working with Chaney. Now that Chaney's gone, did that send Sam Pittman's status into uncertain territory? Well, you squashed those rumors this morning with a report at DogNation.com. What I found really interesting about that, first of all, I would invite everyone to go to DogNation.com and read Jeff's piece about this, where he kind of dives into why Pittman's valuable and what exactly is going on here. But it couldn't help but notice, Jeff, that when you tweeted out the story from your account, and Dog Nation, the five-star offensive tackle and Georgia commit for the class of 2020, Broderick Jones, kind of jumped in there, had his own message about that. And this is such a strong indication of why Pittman's so valuable at Georgia. Let me show you the tweet from Broderick Jones. I'll give you a chance to respond. You report that Pittman's not going anywhere. Broderick Jones says he better not leave, LOL. And Jeff, that to me, in those few words that Jones uses there, such a perfect encapsulation what this is all about. Georgia has built its program around elite offensive linemen, guys like Broderick Jones in the future. They love Pittman. The fact that Pittman is staying, I think, is a big deal for Georgia.
Yeah, and I talked to a source about this. I had lots of sources on this, but I wanted to get one with perhaps some really good, direct, firsthand knowledge of what was happening here. And the indication was, and I don't even think it was a Knoxville story, because with Pittman, Brandon, everybody looks at Will Friend, and that's Jeremy Pruitt's guy. It's his best friend. What were they going to do? Nudge Will Friend over to tight ends coach? Well, that's where Tennessee's best recruiter is right now in Niedermeyer. So really, I think the bigger flirtation with Pittman in Georgia was not Knoxville, it was Tuscaloosa. I think that was a situation where the schools were, everybody's going to look at Pittman and his value. And I think that's probably the major thing to look at with Pittman staying at home, maybe rebuffing some interest from both Tennessee and Alabama.
Yeah, I was really glad that you brought that up in your piece at DogNation.com, because if Brent Key does leave Alabama and go to Georgia Tech, as has been reported by the AJC, and that could happen any time now, if that does indeed happen, it's really that Alabama job, an opportunity to work with his good friend Dan Enos, that could also be a big issue here, because Alabama, much the same way it paid Craig Kuligowski late in his career to come be the defensive line coach, it could have done the same thing with Sam Pittman along the offensive line. So I was really glad in your reporting, and it sounds like Broderick Jones and others really glad about this as well, that you did make mention of the Alabama situation there, because it's really, in terms of losing Pittman, that was probably a bigger threat maybe than Tennessee in this regard.
Yeah, and I mean, everybody wants to maybe escalate news stories. We're not in the big business of doing that, but to me, Brandon, if Sam Pittman would have left Georgia in this year of lots of turnover, 2019, of lots of personnel leaving, lots of key staff members leaving, if Sam Pittman would have left this program, I would have thought Georgia's arc for eventual success would have been stunted a little bit, because there's really nobody quite like Sam Pittman at all. And, Pittman is some good news, Brandon. And, sometimes we like to, in the middle of these live shows, there's There's some messages that pop up. There's some good news and bad news. A couple things that kind of broke over the last maybe four to 5 minutes for me is we talked about Fitzgerald out of Colquitt County. He was going to take an official visit last night.
That's the kicker.
He sent me a message that, Ryan Fitzgerald, he sent me a message that he was going to visit Georgia this weekend. That's no longer not happening. He's backing it up to later in January. Okay. But here's the big one. Doug Nestor, man. And you don't even know this. Doug Nestor has effectively eliminated Georgia. Nestor in Georgia is not going to happen. I think the young man's travels around the All-American game kind of showed him about the distance from Atlanta to back home, and he wants his family to come watch him play. So Doug Nestor in Georgia, no longer a thing. I don't even think an official visit's going to happen, even though he also loves Sam Pittman. Sorry, Dog Nation, but Georgia will not add the Ohio State commitment. Not planning on taking an official. He's no longer entertaining interest in Georgia whatsoever.
So that's kind of a big deal here. So let me reset what Jeff has delivered here. We're talking about Sam Pittman, his decision to return to Georgia for 2019 as offensive line coach. He's already had a significant impact on Georgia's recruiting effort, the 2019 class included. But in terms of those final names available for Georgia, and Jeff, you've been writing about this and chronicling this, there's only a small number of names we're actually discussing for one of these final spots for Georgia. One of those was the four-star offensive lineman, Doug Nestor, who, for a lot of schools may have been a guard. I think Georgia was going to try him at tackle. You can correct me on that if I'm wrong, but that was certainly the indication that Georgia might try him at tackle. But it sounds like now Nestor has eliminated Georgia from consideration. Maybe it's Ohio State still. Maybe it's Penn State here, West Virginia, I guess, to a certain degree, a factor. I mean, are those the schools now that are going to lead for Nestor now that he's not coming to Georgia?
Yeah, because Columbus is only like 2 hours away from him. That's a really hometown fit right there. His dad was actually a construction worker that worked away for his occupation, his vocation in life. He was always away from home. Nestor, such an outstanding young man, never made a B in his high school career either. Great stats. Ohio State kind of views him as a guard. Sam Pittman thought he could be a tackle. There was some great interest there, but unfortunately, this All-American game travel, for right now, I've got a source close to the family that says he's not going to tour Georgia, not going to take the official visit, just wants to stick closer to home. And for Georgia and those last remaining big fish in the class, I can effectively, at least for our purposes at Dog Nation, you might read something somewhere else, but for Doug Nestor in Georgia, I just don't see that happening anymore.
And let me just give a quick addendum to this, and this is not the typical thing that fans do of we didn't need him anyway. But when you look at the void he was going to try to fill at Georgia, it was going to be difficult to figure out how he fit into the plans here. Now, I think that Georgia wants as many good players as it can get. Nestor would have been an example of that. Flipping a guy from Ohio State's an example of the kind of cachet that Nestor has in the college football community. But, Georgia has a lot of interior offensive linemen, needs more tackles. To me, it doesn't seem like something you see a lot of where a guard shifts over and plays tackle. He may go on to have greater success, and I do think Nestor's going to be a very good offensive lineman where he goes, but the honest truth is Nestor may end up having greater success at a different program anyway.
Well, here's what I look at it as. It's kind of like one of those hybrid guys that Sam Pittman in Georgia's going after a lot. Much in the vein of Cade Mays. Remember Nestor, I saw him at the All-American games, man. He was almost 6'7". He was big.
Yeah.
Georgia thought he had the fit. And look how Cade Mays kind of bobbed and weaved from guard to the tackle spot as well. Nation's number 5 guard. That was going to be very interesting for Georgia to get in the mix there. Great player, one of the best guys left on the board for Georgia in 2019. But, he's a guy to me that I thought let's call him what it is, Brandon.
Yeah.
Let's develop a new before the Hedges term here. He would have been a Cordwood recruit for Georgia.
Yeah.
You know how Georgia likes to stack up big-time prospects like Cordwood? That's what I think Doug Nestor would have been. I wouldn't call him a luxury item, but I would call him a guy that Georgia just wants to have a surplus with because that's how big boy football's won.
So let me restate the news that Jeff Sintel is reporting. The 4-star offensive lineman Doug Nestor has eliminated Georgia. That will not be one of the schools that he considers signing with here in February of 2019. Jeff, before we hear from Nolan Smith in an outstanding interview, let me also circle back on what sort of starts off the Sam Pittman conversation. The fact that Jim Chaney is now on his way to Tennessee, has arrived officially as the Tennessee offensive coordinator. What's next in your mind from a recruiting standpoint when it comes to the Georgia offensive coordinator search? It doesn't seem like, given the fact that, there's not a lot of offensive names left for Georgia in the 2019 class. in terms of the urgency of making this hire? Is this something that you think that Georgia needs to do quickly? How will recruits view this? James Coley's name factors in this. Obviously, Coley is an impactful recruiter. With your mind towards recruiting, what is your take on the offensive coordinator opening that exists at Georgia right now?
I think it's got to happen fast because currently Georgia is coordinator-less, if we want to use that unique term. No offensive coordinator currently, no defensive coordinator currently. I think James Coley, man, just makes too much sense. Elite South Florida recruiter, already the co-offensive coordinator, and he's also done that job before at Miami. He didn't call the plays at Florida State with Jimbo Fisher. That's Jimbo's job.
Yeah.
But he did serve as the offensive coordinator there as well. And retaining Coley, retaining his title that kept him away from Texas A&M, keeping that South Florida pipeline that James Coley recruits so well, I think it makes too much sense. I mean, everybody's on Twitter today and they're seeing these names that pop up. Matt Canada at Maryland. Eddie Grant, I think, is a very interesting name that's now at Kentucky that really understands the way Georgia plays football. Running backs, smash mouth, physical downhill football. That's an intriguing name. But again, for me, it just seems like it's just going to be Coley as the guy. And then other thing to think about there is who's your tight ends coach?
Right.
Who's the guy that coaches the tight ends? That's another thing to think about from the recruiting perspective.
Don Williams says, but will James Coley open it up, or will it be more the same with the Jim Chaney situation? I think there's a lot of evidence to suggest that Kirby Smart was actually more happy with the status of the Georgia offense than some people may want to admit. I do think that Coley will follow a pretty similar blueprint were he to be promoted. But as Jeff Sintel said, given Coley's recruiting ties and the fact that he is a fast riser in the coaching industry, when it comes to Coley, this is essentially a use him or lose him scenario. He'll be someone else's coach, maybe even a head coach sooner rather than later. So if you want to maintain that pipeline to South Florida, you need to give Coley a raise. You need to give him a big job. Otherwise, he's going somewhere else. I'm not saying as soon as next year, but you're not gonna keep him happy forever as sort of a middle tier position coach.
Well, here's what I don't understand, Brandon, and this is it's not going to make it a Sintel soapbox or anything like that. But man, help me understand this. Anybody out there, help me understand this. All the pieces that Georgia lost, Chubb, Michelle, from, kind of playing, juggling quarterbacks and everything else, and somehow Georgia's offensive production increased in 2018. I get the style points, not imaginative enough, not winning the big games, but anybody that wants to sit there and look at Jim Chaney and look that horse in the mouth a little bit, here's what I got to say. Jeremy Pruitt knows a lot more about football than everybody on this feed, everybody at Dog Nation World headquarters. And for him to throw that amount of money at Jim Chaney, of course he wants to weaken Georgia at the same time while helping Tennessee, but Jim Chaney's got to get this hire right to go to year 3 and year 4 at Tennessee.
All right, we'll hear from Nolan Smith coming up, the nation's #1 prospect. Fascinating conversation that Jeff Sintel had with him. Before that, though, here on Before the Hedges, presented by Kroger. Let me tell you about a great event that Kroger's got coming up this weekend. You can come join your local Kroger chef for a guided kids cooking experience, which includes an apron and patch, a chef's hat, a recipe card box, and this month a cheese grater. It's all just $7. And in January, Kroger Chef Jr. is going to be featuring spinach dip. It's this upcoming Saturday, January 12th, then again on January the 19th, and also as a special treat this month, listen to this, all participants will also receive a buy one, get one free ticket for an upcoming Atlanta Gladiators game. So go out and watch some hockey. That's a lot of fun there, too. The website to go to is KrogerChefJr.com. You see it right there on your screen for those of you watching on video. KrogerChefJr.com. You can find the closest Kroger store to you and reserve your spot. What a great experience for you and your kids there. Speaking of great experiences, what a great experience it was for Georgia fans to get a chance to sign for the 2019 class, the nation's #1 prospect, Nolan Smith. And of course, a lot of Dog fans are already aware of what the buzz is about when it comes to Smith. But for a little more on that, both in terms of who he is on the field and the impactful leadership that he shows off the field, let's enjoy this conversation with Smith and Jeff Sintel right now.
Be the best I could be on and off the field. Most definitely the #1 thing is schoolwork. So I'll be entering the field of biochemical engineering, and I want to succeed in the classroom as much as I want to succeed on the field.
When you were watching the Texas game, what was going through your mind? Was it?
We're gonna be all right. We made a couple simple errors, but we had a lot of people not play because of the draft, and that's understandable. And that's the thing that you have. At the end of the day, you have to take care and do what's best for you and your family. But we had a lot of players not play as starters, and that's key factors. So we wasn't worried about anything like that.
Nolan, you had, for the record, you had your recruiting matured. I remember meeting you at True 19, and you were like all Georgia. You went through the Clemson maybe phase, the Alabama maybe phase. What kept you committed to Georgia? Why was it always Georgia?
It's home. I went to other places.
If you look way above the 40-yard line, 45-yard line, NBC is going to have to take down that big
It's something about Athens that's going to hold you. Like even if you visit, I got some boys say that's the best time of my life was spending with you and your boys. It's just something that holds you. And as a boy coming from Georgia, it held me home, and I felt like I was making the right decision. And most definitely, I trust Coach Lanning. Like, this is my livelihood, and I wanted a coach I could really trust that wasn't going to leave me for 1 year. At least I have Coach Lanning for 2 years, so I'd be happy with that.
It looks like they're going to play you all over. You did some inside linebacker today, outside backer. Are you cross-training coming in to, like, wherever you can get on the defense to help the team?
Not like that. I don't want inside linebacker. I could play it. It's just not something I want to do. I want to rush the passer, and I really feel good rushing the passer. I got 2 sacks today in the first quarter before they started chipping me, and I just feel like that's something I'm made to do, and I love rushing the passer, sacking the quarterback. Now, I can play inside linebacker if they need me to play it, but that's not what I'm going there for.
So we're going to look back at this 3 or 4 years from now. When you leave the University of Georgia, what do you want to have accomplished during your time in Athens?
Most definitely. If it's 4 years, I'm not going to get my degree in 4 years. I want to be ready to finish it all in around 5 years or almost
3.5 minutes.
And then
hurry.
After that, I just want to make my stamp. Like, I want to do community service. Like, I feed the homeless in Savannah every year. I want to eventually bring that to Georgia, and I just want to do so much for them and for people of the less fortunate or the kids that are less fortunate. And I just want to give back. Because I was one of those kids that I sit at the Boys and Girls Club every day. No one came to visit us, to play with us, so I want to do that, what they didn't do for me.
Nolan, you're always a happy, charismatic dude. Dog Nation yesterday, all I heard from greeters and fans was, man, it's rough. Give us some good news. What sort of hope do you have for the group of players coming in your 2019 class?
Nothing but good news. We're going to be all right. We believe that Coach Smart gonna get us there. So.
How important was Tyreke?
Oh, big. We needed that. We needed a DB, and that's what we got, a DB. So I'm happy.
What do you think you like best about going to go play football? Are you gonna get 7? Because Tyreke wears 7 too. Who's getting 7, man?
I don't know, man. It's probably up for grabs. I'll do whatever number they put me in, to be honest. I just play football. I don't wear no gloves, nothing cute, no sleeve. The boys told me you this and that, but you ain't got no swag. I don't even like wearing no undershirt. I don't even like wearing a girdle. So
2 minutes.
So apparently I ain't got no swag, so I don't care about the number. It's the man that make the number.
Nolan, when were you for sure going to Georgia? Was it that week you spent for the Vanderbilt game? Was it the last official? When was it over? I mean, really over in your mind and in your heart that you were going to be able to?
My last official.
Was it?
And I had a blast, but I just didn't feel it. I never felt like that ever. Like, it's just not my official, but like, I went to games and everything, and just the family vibe and culture that the coaches was giving me, it was crazy, and that would make me sign. Now, if I didn't have that, I'm not even gonna lie, I probably went to just say, forget everything and go to the SEC.
Brian Brzee, you guys are tight. You're the same guy. You said that back in the opening. What are you going to tell him? You're going to want to hope to play with him, right?
Of course. I told him. He said yesterday in the locker room when we was at practice, man, it's just, I'm feeling good about my senior year. I said, son, when you started, you're going to realize that you don't know nothing. You do so much growing from your junior year to your senior, it's crazy. So it's crazy. I can't wait.
Nolan Smith.
So really good stuff there from Nolan Smith. Incredible conversation, Jeff. We learned a lot about him. You see one of the reasons why Nolan's such a highly regarded recruit, already very polished, already very seasoned. It's a guy that's ready for the college level, and he shows that during the interview, but he also showed that during the All-American Bowl himself when he gets to the quarterback. And for Georgia program, especially its fans, watched that national championship game on Monday night and said one of the big differences between Georgia and Clemson is Clemson's ability to affect the passer consistently, down in, down out throughout the entirety of the game. There are a lot of fans who want to see Georgia do more of that, and Nolan Smith's one of the guys that could lead the way for Georgia in that regard in 2019, 2020, and maybe even beyond.
I would say this. Through his 3 years in Athens, I'm going to say the number over-under. You like those over-unders and prop bets, don't you?
I do.
I'm going to say 18 sacks. I think he's probably good for about 5, 8, 10. I think he's 18 to 20 sacks. I think 3 seasons at Georgia, 20 sacks. I think that would be a substantial career for. And remember, that's right up there with the Georgia all-time sack leaders if he does that. Nolan's talented enough to put up a 12-sack season easy.
Yeah, and listen, my issue with Nolan isn't so much how many sacks he gets individually, but there is kind of a magic number I'd like to see Georgia eclipse. I'd like to see Georgia as a team go over 40. And so whether it be a combination of getting some of these from Nolan, getting some of these from Jermaine Johnson, year 2 of Adam Anderson, Brenton Cox, I'd love to see Georgia find 40 sacks next year, Jeff. I really would.
I mean, you look at it, and I mean, you go down the list. I've got it up right now. Justin Houston only had 20 sacks at Georgia. You keep going on. Jarvis Jones had 28 sacks at Georgia. And you're looking at the school record right there. Jordan Jenkins, a great sack artist, had 19 sacks. And then everybody obviously remembers David Pollock for what he did at Georgia as well in the sack column.
Brian McPhail in our YouTube comment section says he thinks that Nolan Smith, the guy we just saw, Lewis Seen, who, by the way, we'll see a little from a little later on, are going to be the impact freshman on defense in 2019. Is that your list, Jeff? I do notice that Brian does mention Nicole Dean there in that conversation. I would probably also add Jermaine Johnson, the junior college transfer, as someone that I expect to play a pretty good bit right away. Are those your impact freshmen, the two that Brian mentions, the couple that I added into that?
I think people are missing one very important name, and that's DJ Daniel, the junior
Good
college
point.
corner.
Good point.
Look who's leaving. I mean, I think Georgia ideally would like DJ to kind of be a plug and play with maybe what DeAndre Baker was his sophomore year, his junior year, that type of talent level already. Georgia's got so many outside backers. I think Nicole Dean will end up starting at some point of his freshman year. He's just so smart, understands concepts.
Well, now hold on now. That's a really interesting statement to make, and I can't just let that dangle there.
Let's go.
If you're saying that Nicole Dean's going to start as a freshman at some point, you've got him leapfrogging Channing Tindall, who is a pretty similar athletic specimen, but a year ahead of him in the program. That's kind of an interesting, unless you're going to say they're going to start side by side next to each other. You're giving a lot to Nicole to say that he might leapfrog over some of those 2018 signees that also looked really good at the linebacker position.
I think Nicole Dean, the way he plays the game, nation's #1 inside linebacker prospect, really smart, intelligent football player, enrolling early, with a mindset to work, with a mindset to come get everything done. I think Georgia's starting inside linebacker, I think the upper tier, when all's said and done, by maybe championship winning time in November of 2019, I think the top inside linebackers are probably going to be Tindall, Monty Rice, and then a guy like Nicole Dean.
That's an interesting statement to make. Cody Dodd in our Facebook comment section says if Dean could start, that'd be huge because he's a beast. Now, I understand where Cody's coming from in saying that, but you also kind of touched on another interesting part of this, that as beastly as Nicobe's physical specs can be, there's an element of playing inside linebacker at the major college level now where it's not so much how much of a beast can you be, but how much of a student of the game you can be, because of the number of times that linebackers now have the ball behind them. They have to get back in coverage here. You're doing a lot of not just lateral side-to-side movement, the way that we think about Roquan Smith doing, but you've also be a guy that can watch out for a football sneaking behind you a little bit too. You got to play going backwards sometimes, and it does take a cerebral guy to be able to do that. We know Dean is certainly an example of that, which does make him an interesting candidate there in that regard.
Let me give you guys a little sneak peek. We're going to crank out those next generation stories for all these signees again sometime in early 2019. Let me tell you this. I was at an Alabama-Mississippi game practice. I think Nicole Dean picked off John Rice Plumlee about 3 times in 15 minutes. When he flashed around the edge, and first of all, an inside linebacker is not supposed to affect a screenplay, and somehow Dean is right in his face. And Plumlee gave me a very interesting story. They're on the bus, they're chilling, they're going back and snack time or whatever, and he's asking Nicole, how did you don't know this? How did you know that? And Nicole starts giving him, your tight end was giving it away. The eyes of your running back,
really
the way he ran his route, he was giving it away. He said, I picked all that stuff up pre-snap so I know what was going on. And Plumlee, ever the charismatic dude, was just like, man, when the guy's that strong and that fast and hits so hard, and he knows the offense I'm running better than the guys on offense with me, he said that was a scary combination.
We're going to hear from 4-star defensive back Tyreke Stephenson on why he chose Georgia coming up in just a moment. Let me sort of put a punctuation mark on this conversation with a comment from Quentin Tewitt in our Facebook comment section who says, where does Quay Walker fit into all of this? That Tennessee hat that he slung on signing day for the 2018 class, probably still spinning in orbit somewhere. But I think a lot of Georgia fans, Walker included, would love to see a bigger impact here in 2019. How do you think Quay Walker factors into this conversation?
Quay Walker, his goals, he's always told me, is he wants to be great in college football. Is he an outside linebacker? Gosh, Georgia's got cordwood there for sure. Is he an inside linebacker? Is he one of those guys that's going to be on the field in nickel and dime packages against spread formations? He's a guy that gives Georgia a lot of options. And I'm going to say this. Everybody starts wondering who I left out when I started talking about Monty Rice, Channing Tindall, and Nicole Dean. That's not a negative towards Quay Walker. That's not a negative towards
situation.
It is just the way Georgia is. They're going to put 5 incredible players in that inside linebacker room to go across the first team and second team. And mark your words, the 2 or 3 that play the most are going to be fantastic football players at Georgia.
Corey Jones in the Facebook comment section also said, I wouldn't mind seeing Tyson Campbell try safety to give DJ Daniel a longer look at cornerback. I know you've been a proponent of maybe Campbell playing the safety position as well, so it's interesting to hear Corey Jones say that in the Facebook comment section. And speaking of that Georgia defensive back situation, another guy that factors into that is Tyreke Stephenson. We can now say that officially after Stephenson committed to Georgia and then eventually signed last Saturday, Stephenson, one of those guys that's one of the top prospects in the country, a guy that could be an impact competitor right away. Why did he choose Georgia? What was the story behind the story with Stevenson's eventual announcement of UGA? Well, Jeff Sentell was there with him in San Antonio to get some more of the details on that. Here's a great chance to find out a little bit more about the latest Bulldog. Here's Jeff Sentell with Tyreke Stephenson.
Why was it Georgia?
Just me being comfortable with Coach Smart and trusting what he says, and being comfortable with the team and the facility, so that's why UGA.
Was there ever a leader? Did somebody come from behind, or was Georgia just a little bit always ahead of Miami, or vice versa?
It was kind of even, like, through the whole process. But, just a couple things here and there put Georgia over the top.
What would those be?
Just, me keeping communication with my coach, with Coach Smart, and, just keeping communication with the Coach Tucker situation. They hit me up first, they let me know what was going on. And they told me don't panic, I trusted that, so them are factors right there.
So that was important when Tucker, the transition from Tucker to whoever it's going to be, they kept you in the loop, and that made you feel really valued?
Yes.
Do you have every sense that Georgia's going to get a good D coordinator and a good DB coach?
Yeah, Coach Smart. I know Coach Smart's going to hire the best of the best. Yeah, Nolan grabbed, he talked with me. Walker, everybody, talking to me, was like, welcome to the family. So it just as excited as I am.
So you did sign a financial aid form and send it into Georgia. That was on the 21st, I believe? Friday?
That Friday.
What was the reaction of Georgia's coaches? Can you describe what they told you?
They were just, Coach Coley, Coach Small, Coach Rumble, they were just yelling, let's go, we got you. And, they wanted me to go public that day, but I told them, you're going to get a one-in-a-lifetime chance, so they respected that.
DeAndre Baker's moving on. A lot of Bulldogs are moving on. You're kind of part of a very important class to kind of reload the depth chart a little bit. How do you feel about the challenge going in to maintain where Georgia's at right now?
I feel it's going to be great, and I feel like I excel when, I got to come in, do what I got to do, step up to the plate. So I feel like I'll be great, even though I'm a freshman. I'm going to bring a senior mentality to it. I'm just coming in to dominate and do what I have to do.
Did you ever feel tempted, like at the reveal or the scavenger hunt? Did you ever get close?
Yeah, I was going to commit, a scavenger hunt day, but I just held it out, and made sure everything was right, and made sure everything was good.
With respect to Miami, how close was this?
It's pretty close. I'm talking major close.
You signed the financial aid form, so you could have wiggled out of this. You could have went to Miami because you weren't bound like a letter of intent, right?
Yeah. So, but with that, I feel like once you make a choice, you got to deal with it. You got to live through it. So once I signed the financial aid papers, I was like, this is a choice I'm gonna stick with, and I'm gonna just stick it out.
So, Tyreke, reporters' questions are what they are. What do you want to tell people? What do you want to tell this new fan base about the player that they're getting? What are you going to bring to the table, and maybe how excited you are to be a Bulldog? What's your message to the fans?
I'm very excited to join y'all Bulldog family, and I'm coming in. I'm giving y'all everything I got, just to put us over the top. And y'all get one great player.
Got any goals for freshman year?
Freshman All-American. I'm a freshman All-ACC freshman.
How important was Devon? Was he like an anchor that, hey, I did this, you're going to love it up there in Athens? Or were any of the guys that are up in Athens now important in your recruitment?
Devon wasn't really important, but he provided like an image I needed, to see because he was from where I'm from. So, with him talking to me, it just provided an image I needed.
Last one, Tyreke. It's over. You'd signed, but the world hadn't seen you unopen the present yet. What did it feel like out there on the podium? Your mom's so happy. What did that feel like for you?
Just great and heartwarming, and I felt blessed and felt like I got a ton of weights off my shoulder, trying to keep it a secret.
Tyreke Stephenson, dream chaser. Number 7, he thinks. Tyreke loves the kids, and the kids love Tyreke. Hey, buddy, thanks for joining us on Dog Nation.
No problem.
Fascinating look at 4-star defensive back Tyreke Stephenson, a big pickup for Georgia on Saturday. Jeff, I know you know Stephenson well. You had a chance to lead that interview there. When you hear from Stephenson, what about that interview stands out to you the most? What did you like the most about that conversation with Stephenson?
Neat little things you pick up. Number one, everybody knows Nolan Smith wanted to be number 7. Lorenzo Carter said you could come and be part of the Wolfpack and get number 7. Now Nolan is kind of sort of bequeathing it to Tyreke. I don't know if that was some last-minute things, but Tyreke said there he better have number 7. He's got to have number 7. So the number 7 jersey is a superficial thing. The second thing, big takeaway from that is, man, I don't know if I've seen a happier, prouder mama.
Yeah.
And anybody out there that loves your mama, I hope this resonates. I have probably never seen a happier mama than Tyreke Stephenson's mother, Jackie Stephenson.
Sure.
And this is why. Remember, he signed on December the 21st.
Right.
They knew where they were going.
Yeah.
But it was kind of like the graduation day and seeing her son happy with his decision that made things so great. And the other thing, Brandon, and this doesn't endear him to Georgia fans, I don't know what will. Man, he signed the financial aid form, which meant everybody that follows our shows, he could have bounced.
Okay, this is an important point. Now, I want to make sure people understand this because after the December 19th ceremony at school, Miami hires Manny Diaz as head coach. Stephenson tweeted some complimentary words about Diaz, and I hate to get into the comment section of a tweet, but if you look at those comments, there's a lot of pushback on Stephenson of, oh, you're just trolling, you've already signed your letter of intent. But as you're saying, that's not the case. That he actually, even after Miami hired Manny Diaz, there was still a choice for Stephenson to make.
He said it was mega close, really close. He saw that in that interview. But the one thing I want people to gravitate towards is he had a get out of commitment free card or a get out of LOI free card because there was no LOI. He signed a financial aid form.
Really important point.
Which tied Georgia to him, but not Tyreke to Georgia. And you know why he stayed with Georgia? Is he said, man, end of the day, you give somebody your word, you tell them you're coming. I knew I could get out of it, but I told Georgia I was on my way and I wanted to stick to my word, and that's why he is still a Bulldog. And for me, I'm going to write something about Tyreke later this week. That's the one point I hope readers, fans, dog fans, anybody understands about Tyreke Stephenson, is he had the out. Mm-hmm. He did the smart thing where, like, I'm going to use the college's not going to use me. But at the end of the day, he decided he wanted to be a man of principle and a man of his word.
Miriam Martin Corbin in our Facebook comment section says also, a buddy, that she loves guys like this that love their mom. It means they've been raised right. I think that's a good comment from Miriam. And Jeff, I love when these parents are this excited about sending their young men to Georgia because that leads me to believe that Georgia's doing things the right way on the recruiting trail. I'm a big believer that it's relationships. It's not who has the coolest edits on Twitter. It's not who has the the cool cachet of being even RBU, which a lot of Georgia fans love thinking of themselves as. I think a lot of that kind of stuff ends up being gimmick recruiting. It's about, can you look a mama in an eye? Can you look a daddy in an eye? And can you create a relationship that can last for years? Can you do that? Can you pull that off? And Tyreke Stephenson is another example of that. These offensive linemen, another example of that. These are guys that that Georgia has been able to build that relationship with. And as a fan of the program, nothing makes me feel better about the future of the program than when I see instances like Stevenson's mom, who's that excited. It just leads me to believe that Georgia continues to go about this process in the right way.
I'm going to say this. I don't think Mama Adams and Papa Adams would be happier if Charlie flipped from Florida to Georgia on signing day than Jackie Stephenson was about her son Tyreke choosing Georgia on his decision day at the Army All-American. The All-American Bowl, excuse me.
A couple other things here, Jim Witherow and Justin Sisk also talking about, you mentioned the number in relationship to Stephenson 4 as the number 7. Jim and Justin, though, in our Facebook comment section are thinking about the number 5, the idea that Stephenson could move to that composite 5-star status. Listen, I think he's already, if you want to look at the overall score, he's knocking on the door of this anyway. Is there a chance that by the time the 2019 cycle is fully closed out here, that Stephenson does get the brand recognition of being a 5-star cornerback?
Well, he's really close. He's number 38 overall on the composite, and he was suffering from cramps a little bit at the All-American game, but this is probably the most. This is what I'm going to say about Tyson Campbell. I think Tyson Campbell is a future first-round pick at safety in the NFL. Mm-hmm. If that's something negative, then so be it. I think he's a first-rounder at safety. I know he's going to continue to try and play corner for Georgia. I think Tyreke Stephenson coming into Georgia is probably better suited to play cornerback than Tyson Campbell was to play cornerback at Georgia.
So I don't think it's a negative when you say that Campbell's more of a safety than a cornerback, as long as you're replacing him with someone who's a relatively equal talent offensively, and Stephenson may be an example of that. I mean, if you're saying that Campbell may end up gravitating towards safety, if someone were to say that, gravitating towards safety because he's just not a cornerback, at that point in time, I think you've subtracted from a premium position. I believe that cornerback, more so than safety, is a premium position at the SEC level. So if Campbell were to get moved because of the presence of Stephenson or the potential presence of a guy like Kyer Lam were he to come to Georgia, or the emergence of a guy like DJ Daniel, that's probably in the category of good problem to have. What you don't want is to recruit a guy as a cornerback, find out he's only a safety, much the same way you don't want to recruit a guy as offensive tackle only to find out that he's only a guard or whatever else. There are just a few premium positions in the world of SEC football, and I think the cornerback is one of those.
Well, with Campbell, and in respect to Campbell, I think there's still some developing to do there. And let's be frank, this was only his second full year of being a cornerback.
That's a good point.
Ever. And Tyson Campbell might be, what, folks, world, I want to be a corner, and he's going to develop into a corner. Again, this me now, instant society, he didn't have an all-SEC freshman year at cornerback. Okay, well, that was only his second year playing the position. Let's see where he's at after, year 2 and year 3. Maybe he's a first-round cornerback, but right now, Georgia's going to want to put their 5 best defensive backs on the field to deal with Alabama, to deal with Clemson, maybe to deal with Ohio State, maybe in a bowl semifinal, in one of those championship semifinal games. And I think Tyson Campbell can be one of those 5 easily.
And my point here on Campbell, too, is, for the totality of the Sugar Bowl, when he was playing a lot more with DeAndre Baker not playing, I think for the most part, the reviews on Campbell's performance are going to be pretty good against a pretty good wide receiver core. I think most people are going to say, now there were obviously a couple moments you may have individually pointed at, but overall, I think you're going to look at a scenario where Campbell probably played okay in that game.
He did, and I think there's a future there for him at cornerback, especially if he keeps developing. But when you see Tyreke and you see potential with a guy like Kyer Lam and DJ Daniel and Mark Webb Jr., let's not forget Mark Webb Jr., and then you've got Eric Stokes, who looks like the A1A cornerback for Georgia for the 2019 season. Georgia has suddenly really changed that defensive back room.
Yeah, Georgia's done a good job of getting some surprise defensive backs to step up and play well. It was a career's worth of that from DeAndre Baker. I'm not going to tell you that Stokes is the next DeAndre Baker, but in terms of being better than the recruiting profile would have suggested, so far you're getting a lot of that from Eric Stokes here as well. That's Jeff Sintel. I'm Brandon Adams. It's Before the Hedges presented by Kroger, and I told you about this before. I want to make sure you're aware of the great event coming up at a Kroger close to you this Saturday. It's the Guided Kids Cooking Experience. And when you show up there, all for just $7, your child's going to get an apron and patch, a chef's hat, a recipe card box, and a cheese grater. This month, Kroger Chef Jr. is featuring spinach dip. It's this particular Saturday on January 12th, then again on January 19th at a Kroger close to you. And this month, as a special treat, all participants are also going to receive a buy one, get one offer on some Atlanta Gladiators tickets. So please check that out. Go to KrogerChefJr.com to find out more details about this, including the Kroger close to you that's hosting Kroger Chef Jr. This is a great experience for you and your kids. Hope you can check that out and reserve your spot at a Kroger close to you. All right, here on Before the Hedges now. As we said, it's been kind of a wild ride in Orlando for the Under Armour All-American game, in San Antonio for the All-American Bowl. We thought it might be appropriate to spend a couple of minutes kind of recapping some of the best of moments here in terms of what we've seen over the last couple of weeks. Jeff, we're going to see Tyreke Stephenson some more here in just a moment. We're going to hear a really cool piece of audio and video from Broderick Jones, who we started the show with. Also a little bit here from Nicole Dean as well. Set up with what we're about to see on Nicole Dean.
So the first thing here is simple. What's the mindset of Nicole Dean as he heads to the University of Georgia? Some good news here on the stream today. His first day of classes was today at the University of Georgia. His first day as a Bulldog on campus was today. Celebrate that. Have some fun tonight with your family. And let's hear from Nicole Dean about what he brings to the program.
Take a look.
I'm coming to work. You know, I feel like I'm coming to work, and I'm coming, like the work period. Like this, the whole reason I'm coming to college, man, is I feel like it's more so a business trip than have fun. I know feeling and having fun was a big thing in my recruiting process, but I'm coming to work. You know, 3-4 years and I'm out. You know, get my degree.
I love that. I'm coming to work, man. I mean, that's the attitude that you want a five-star freshman to have. That's a guy right there who seems to have a little bit of a chip on his shoulder about proving himself, even though he's already got a collection of accolades. This whole idea of the de-recruitment begins once you sign, you got to knock those stars off of you. I mean, in that particular case, Nicole Dean is not handling himself like a five-star guy. He's handling himself as like a zero-star guy who wants to prove to some older classmen, some upperclassmen that he belongs in the Georgia roster. I love that mentality and that mindset. Horn Lake, Mississippi raises him tough, and Dean certainly has the look of someone who brings a little toughness to UGA.
So for fans of The Wire, like this guy right here, Omar coming?
Yeah.
No. At the University of Georgia, Nicole coming.
Yeah, no, I think that's great. And, you know, Jeff, I've told you this before, and I think it's worth saying again when it comes to Nicole Dean. This is the way that recruiting's supposed to work. You're supposed to produce a Roquan Smith. He wins the Buckus Award. He's a top 10 pick. And then after that, you just absolutely clear the board of elite linebackers. Quay Walker, Channing Tindall for the class of 2018. Also some outside linebackers there as well. 2019, Tresman Marshall, Ryan Davis, who I like a lot. Nicole Dean may end up being the jewel of the bunch. That's how recruiting's supposed to work. It's the same thing, I believe, that can also happen for Georgia with its defensive back recruitment. You produce a DeAndre Baker, he wins the Thorpe, he becomes a first-round draft pick, maybe even a very high first-round draft pick, and you just clear the board of elite, defensive backs for years to come. This is one of those rare examples in college football where it's actually working out for Georgia at the linebacker position the way that it's supposed to.
You have no complaints about the
I
inside
have
linebacker
no complaints
recruiting.
about that whatsoever, nor should anybody.
No complaints from Brandon Adams about the inside linebacker recruiting.
Now, by the way, speaking of Nicole Dean, he's formed a fast friendship with Lewis Seam, the four-star safety signee for UGA. They were both on hand for the All-Star game, and they teamed up. You can see this full video at DogNation.com. Jeff posted this, the Scene and Dean show. I think it's really funny. Both these guys have great personalities. But the aspect of the video that I like more than anything else was the emphatic statement that these guys want to take down Alabama. They want to knock off the Bull of the Woods right here in the SEC. If you're a UGA fan, you will love this from Scene and Dean. Here's another one of those greatest hits moments from this past couple weeks of All-Star games. Here's Nicole Dean and Lewis Seam.
Me, first, well, let me go back to the goal. I want to completely destroy Alabama. I want to win, all right? And, with the class Georgia building, that's exactly what they're trying to do and what they're gonna do. And you got Dean. This dude don't play. You got me in the second, and I don't play. So it's just putting the class at a second level. So then it's just reload from there on.
Right.
I've been very clear over the time that I really like what Louis Cine shows on film. I mean, his game highlights from his senior season. This past month for me has been an example of how he's also seeming to come into his own from a leadership standpoint. He reminds you a little bit of what Richard LeCount was like as a 2017 signing when he had that just magnetic personality as a safety. I know you'd reported that Dean, I should say Cine, had really worked on some of those defensive backs that Georgia's still recruiting. That Cine was instrumental this week with a lot of those guys. But when he says want to completely destroy Alabama. Now, Cine knows that's certainly easier said than done, but the fact that they're setting their sights competitively as high as they are, as a Georgia fan, I'm going to take that as well. I'm going to take every bit of that.
You didn't say I will hope to outlast Alabama in overtime or come back against them at halftime.
I like it.
He said completely destroy. And then with Dean over there in the background, he's like, amen. That's right, brother.
Yeah.
One more neat little note on Dean. His favorite color is the color green.
Yeah.
Because that's the color of money, and that will be a money player at inside linebacker for Georgia.
I got no problem with that whatsoever. Another one of these greatest hits from this past couple of weeks, Broderick Jones, who we started our show talking about today because of what he said on Twitter about your report about Sam Pittman, the fact that he is returning to Georgia for 2019. Jones said some very complimentary things about UGA. I'm going to give you a chance to see that in a moment, but it's important to give the full context for this. Jeff, this comes, chronologically right on the heels of Georgia looking bad in the Sugar Bowl and kind of a down moment for a lot of Georgia fans of what's going on with this program. There seemed to be a level of disinterest about going to New Orleans and playing the Longhorns. Georgia fans were in a bad mood when Broderick Jones said no when it comes to his feelings for UGA. They're just as robust as ever. I love this from Jones, if not for anything else, for the timing for when he said this. I thought it came at a time in which Georgia fans really needed to hear it. Here's more from the 5-star offensive tackle commitment for the class of 2020.
I feel pretty amazing about Georgia right now.
Schools are coming after you. What keeps you committed to Georgia?
Georgia is just like it's hard to overrule Georgia because Georgia, they have a great coaching staff. They have a great school, great facility, great coaching, and my relationship with the coaches is just amazing.
I mean, listen, how can you not be happy about that? For Georgia that is trying to sort of fill out its full level of depth with its offensive line to feel just as good about its tackles as it does its interior offensive linemen, that level of excitement from Broderick Jones will also get a return level of excitement from many UGA fans too.
Everybody feels that they like these comfortable parallels. DeAndre Baker, Roquan Smith. Broderick Jones, that young man right there, is the most likely recruit to do what Andrew Thomas did at Georgia in my mind. What do I mean by that? Play the tackle spot, right tackle. I think he can play left tackle and do the things where he immediately takes over from one of Georgia's elite offensive linemen. Let's look at the timeline, Brandon. Andrew Thomas is very likely to be a declared day dog in late December, January of 2020. That's after 3 years, he's out, he's done. He could be a potential top 10, top 15 pick. No stretch of the imagination there. And what Georgia has told Broderick Jones is he could come in and be the guy that takes over for Andrew Thomas's roles at tackle for Georgia. And that is a very impressive player parallel.
Yeah, that's one of those things where by the time that actually happens, that the significance of that transition is going to seem even bigger than it does right now. It already seems like a big deal. First of all, it makes me feel like my life is just passing before my eyes. The fact that we're already talking about the next tackle at Georgia after Andrew Thomas. It seems like 5 minutes ago we were talking to him as a high school junior or high school senior at least. The fact that this could very well be his last year at Georgia coming up, that sort of makes me feel a little bit weird. But by the time he's done, he could be revered for his position, much the same way a couple other guys I just mentioned were. Roquan Smith is a national award winner. DeAndre Baker is a national award winner. Listen, I wouldn't put it past Thomas, not for a long shot, to be a national award winner at his position.
Yeah, we're not trying to be, boo-hoo-hoo, look to the future guy or anything like that. But this is a recruiting show. So this is smart recruiting coverage or just smart recruiting by the University of Georgia.
Yeah.
Georgia could lose 2 starting tackles after the 2019 season. And Broderick Jones is a name folks need to know because he's a guy that would be those reloads, re-ups, whatever you want to call it, to take over at that depth chart position.
Yeah, I would characterize Thomas as a likelihood of leaving. I would characterize Wilson as a possibility of leaving. But at least one of those guys at this point in time, based on what I think I understand about draft scouts, I'd say Thomas is probably a likelihood.
Yeah, and then you've got, okay, who's left in the program? And so you got Cade Mays as a natural tackle. I think Warren McClendon can play both. Owen Condon played a lot this year, more than maybe lots of folks expected. Made the travel squad for Georgia.
How about Ben Cleveland in the final year getting another look at offensive tackle? I'm talking about in 2020.
2020, that's because he's still a young junior, a young true junior. And look at those interior linemen, Brandon.
Yeah.
I mean, Kinley, Sawyer, Hill, Clay Webb, yada, yada, yada. I mean, there's a lot of dudes that, there's a lot of dudes that are going to have to play in the interior at Georgia, and there's only 3 starting slots there.
Tywan Taylor in our YouTube comment section says when he looks at Tyreke Stephenson, the recent 4-star defensive back signee, he says he thinks he has a perfect body type to play the star position as the 5th defensive back at Georgia. Be that as it may, when Stephenson had his big day on Saturday, I thought it was really telling that leading into that, Stephenson took some time to hang out with some kids, a great moment you were able to capture on video. And when you're looking at these best of moments from the All-Star games in Orlando and San Antonio, these private moments with Stephenson and the other recruits visiting with these kids before the day of the All-American Bowl there in San Antonio, this is a really cool other side of Tyreke Stephenson. I think it's worth seeing right now here as well. So make sure you check that out.
What's the best part about this for you?
Just playing with them, having them shoot the ball. Having them shoot the ball, and, just me, giving them some pointers on shooting it.
Okay, it's hard. Who else is going to be the third one?
So that's Tyreke Stephenson there, getting a chance to hang out and be a part of what's going on leading into the All-Star game there in San Antonio. A really great moment for him, and really cool to see them be a part of that before what was, for him personally, a really huge day.
True smile, a genuine smile right there for Tyreke. And some people act like a nice dude on social media or for their Instagram. Love that story about Tyreke, how he was so swallowed up and ambushed by those young people in San Antonio. The bus left him, man. He had to get on the phone and
He's
call.
the Lane Kiffin of the All-American Bowl. He got left by the bus.
And they called it, and it was kind of like the biggest.
Tyreke Freshwater.
Wow, watch where you're going there.
Yeah, you better be careful about that.
But the biggest Uber in San Antonio made a U-turn and come back and picked up Tyreke Stephenson because they had him signing cards, signing construction paper, taking selfies. They were trying to get tickets from Tyreke. That young man, from everything I saw from him in the All-American Week in San Antonio, a really genuine young person.
So let me do a plug here because I know that Jeff is too modest to do this. You got to make sure you check out DogNation.com. Centel, Intel, all the other recruiting stuff. A lot of this stuff and extra behind-the-scenes stuff from all these guys is going to be at DogNation.com. Some of this to come in the days ahead. If you really want to get a chance to feel like you know the guys who've either just come into the 2019 class or some of those guys who are still outstanding who might join this class, Jeff's got some great stuff from his travels to Orlando and San Antonio coming up in the days ahead at DogNation.com. So I hope that you will check that out. And of course, here on Before the Hedges, presented by Kroger, we still got a little bit of time to talk about some of that kind of stuff as well. So Jeff, what do you say we do this? Maybe we can even do a little bit of an extended version of this today. We like to do Hurry Up, where we take as many questions and comments as we can. I think it's important to give plenty of time for this today, just on the basis of people have got some questions about who is yet to come for the 2019 class. I want to make sure we touch on that. We've also, as you've reported on, Sam Pittman coming back. People still want to talk about that. What's next for Georgia now that Jim Chaney's on his way to Tennessee? There's a lot to do in regards to some kind of stuff. So can we kind of do kind of a expanded hurry up and rapid fire wise take as many questions as we can over the next few minutes? We may even go a little longer than 5 minutes on this, but can we just get a little hurry up going here and really try to make this as interactive as possible for the next couple of minutes?
Hope somebody asked me about the last time Tennessee hired away an offensive coordinator from Georgia. That year was 1979. What happened the following year, Brandon?
Georgia won the national championship.
Let's go.
There you go. Let's rock and roll here on that. Mark Gottfried says, I hope the new OC puts the fullback back in the offense and they move McBride there. Guy's got unbelievable speed. A lot of people wish about McBride playing fullback. At this point in time, I just don't think Kirby Smart wants a fullback as part of this offense anymore. I like fullbacks at the NFL level. I wouldn't mind seeing Georgia use one. I just don't think that's Kirby Smart's MO anymore.
I think the total number of fullbacks and tight ends Georgia has in the program now it's 3.
John William Adams asked an interesting question. You wrote about Kendall Milton this week. He says, is it better to recruit the 2 5-stars at the same time, bring them in for the same visits, or recruit them separately?
Well, it's very interesting. Everybody saw the social media tweets, and somebody tweeted out, I think, a picture of Chubb and Michelle together, and they tagged both of those gentlemen in the tweet, and they both liked it, and they both said they've talked about it. Be very interesting. I think those guys are looking for the best independent situations, and if it's Georgia with that massive line and the openings in the depth chart, that would be very interesting.
Charles Kaiser says Kearis Jackson, is he getting an expanded role in 2019?
I think so. He's going to get a great special teams role at least, because you got to remember this: who's your punt returner, your immediate punt returner in 2019? There are going to be a lot of candidates for that job.
Brian McPhail says, who's the next player to sign this year? I guess I may alter that a little bit and say, who's the next guy to commit to Georgia? You talked earlier about the fact that Doug Nestor is now out of the running for that. So who's left for you, Jay, there?
I think the most likely elite recruit that could still possibly choose Georgia and holds them in very high standing, you have to start with Kyrie Lam.
Kelly Burnett says, of all of our defensive recruits, Jeff B.A., who do you think impacts the most as a freshman? Is it Dean for you? You've talked about him a lot on today's show.
DJ Daniel. Still think DJ
Okay.
Daniel.
Interesting answer. 404 Dog for Life says, do you think that Georgia's going to spread out with its new offense more, get more explosive? I'll let you answer. My answer to that one, though, is Georgia's not going to do anything for consistently on an offense that's going to tire out its offensive linemen. It's just not going to do that.
I wouldn't say that. I would think that Georgia's built to overwhelm folks with physics in the fourth quarter with battering ram tailbacks, DeAndre Swift, Kenny McIntosh, remember that name, guys, Zamir White. I think Georgia as a core is still going to be Georgia.
Will Marlowe says, who do you think the leaders on this UJ football team are going to be? It's easy to say Fromm and Thomas on the offensive side of the ball for next season, maybe Swift in that conversation there as well. Is there a defensive leader right now, you think?
J.R. Reed, easy.
Yeah, I think so. Boy, I tell you what, we had a chance to talk to JR after the Sugar Bowl. That was not a great day for the Georgia program, but Reed was really impressive. That is a guy that's turned out to be just one heck of a football player. Eric Patton says we're going to get Leonard Manuel for the 2020 class. A lot of wide receiver chatter, given the fact that Georgia misses on Hazelwood.
Yeah, everybody likes him a lot. I'm still not convinced whether he's a tight end or a wide receiver. Going to keep growing. Maybe needs to put on weight. Doesn't have that elite speed. If everybody wants to talk about the guy after Hazelwood, here's the name. That name is Jermaine Berg.
And he's getting close to making an announcement, right?
I think he's close, and I think it might come down to Georgia and LSU. I think he's passed on that flirtation he had with Alabama.
Okay, Kevin Drummer says, how about the 2020 quarterback situation? Who's the best out there for a 2020 quarterback for Georgia?
This is what we said last night at Marlowe's Tavern at our Dog Nation Countdown to Signing Day event. Robbie Ashford, nation's number 3 dual threat quarterback out of Hoover, Alabama, going to decide in March. It's going to be Georgia or Auburn. That seems very clear to me. Should he choose Georgia, you still got to worry about the MLB draft. And my man here is like, can we just once get a dual threat quarterback without any sort of strings attached?
Yeah, listen, I like baseball. I don't like Georgia players who play baseball, so at least I don't like for those guys to go split that time there. So I'd like to hear the word baseball not pop up so much with some of these recruits, I guess. Dante Edey asked a really good question. 2 guys that spent 2018 injured, at least for the majority of the year. Bigger breakout performance in 2019. Devad Wilson or Zamir White?
Zamir White. No question.
Wow.
Zamir White.
That's exciting to think about. Charles Kaiser says, do you think Zeus gets 1,000 yards this season?
I think the carries will be divvied up a lot. You're going to see Harrion. Let's not discount Harrion. Harrion will come back as a senior.
Played well in the Sugar Bowl.
Did not punch out in that game whatsoever.
He's already had an Instagram post as of late. Now, Connor Riley and I always joke about my inability to decipher Instagram posts, but I believe his post was suggesting that he is planning on returning to Georgia, although it's a lot of got to get that money. Some of those phrases are hard for me to decipher, but in this case, I do believe that was Harry saying he planned on returning to Georgia.
No cap. He's planning on coming to Georgia, right? You know what no cap means?
I don't know what no cap means.
That means I am being very serious here.
Okay, good. Well,
no
good.
Cap.
Good for him. Let's see. J.D. Hall says, who's the favorite for offensive coordinator right now?
Got to say James Coley.
Okay. And I will say it was very interesting to hear on Dog Nation Day this morning that Mike Griffith says that he's heard from some sources that say Georgia is at least talking to some outside candidates. But Mike also acknowledged that it's unclear at this point in time, is that a replacement as a tight ends coach? Is that a offensive pair of hands to go along with Coley, underneath Coley on the organizational chart? Or is this truly an example of what a lot of fans seem to want, which is that outside name?
Ben Watson, tight ends coach, is that what you want to see, man? He's retiring.
Yeah, listen, I got to have coaches who've coached before. And I love Ben Watson. I love Champ Bailey. I love Hines Ward. And I've talked to Hines Ward about this. He wants to be a coach at Georgia. He's been made that very clear. But coaching's a profession. It's a job. It's a thing that you do for a living. And
can you see Hines Ward in Clinch County talking to the 2024 great tight end, or Homerville deep in South Georgia on a recruiting run?
I think a guy like that, if he wanted to put his mind towards it, could do anything he wanted to. But I think that guys like that are also pretty busy counting their money, and sometimes that precludes you from really wanting to listen. It ain't a glamorous life. I mean, one of these days, Kirby Smart will tell some of those stories, and all these other guys have been running with Kirby all these years to tell some of those stories. That's a lot of eating at Huddle House, or whatever else, sleeping in a car in some cases, especially at the the sort of earlier lower ranks in some of this kind of stuff. I know it looks cool to have that Georgia G on your shirt and be a college football coach, and these days you get paid a lot of money. But in terms of the real work of a coach, it's not coaching them up during practice. It's calling them up on the phone and getting them to come.
So with some of those guys, I think, and Bakari Rambo, I think, is a good example. Nick Williams is another good example.
Yeah.
Those are graduates now that work.
They're working their way up, yes.
They're working their way up. But I think if the name ever, Hines Ward or Champ or Ben Watson, if they do ever coach, I think it will be at Georgia. And I think what will motivate them is not money or their time, or it's going to be they're wanting to see Georgia prosper and flourish.
Really quick final one here comes from Don Williams, who says, who's that Georgia defensive coordinator going to be? Are you thinking, based on the fact we haven't heard much of anything, that now makes it more likely that Dan Lanning, who got some extra attention in the Sugar Bowl, does he become that guy?
I don't know. I think maybe there's a scenario where Dan Lanning, who definitely deserves it, might be a co-defensive coordinator. Remember, Georgia's got to find a defensive backs coach. Ideally, it would be a defensive backs coach that could also be a coordinator or a co-defensive coordinator as well. And I think, and this is where we harken back to what Tyreke Stephenson says, he has every confidence in the world that Kirby Smart will land the best man for the job there. And there's some ideal candidates. I keep coming back to the best possible guy Georgia could hire to check the recruiter, the Alabama defensive knowledge, the defensive backs coach. I think that's Derek Ansley, man. That's a guy with a great resume that I'm pretty sure could be a head coach somewhere in major college football in about 2 years after he's spent some time as a Georgia defensive coordinator.
But the problem is he may get a head coaching job without coming to Georgia, which means he's not coming to Georgia, right?
Yeah, that might be the case. I mean, you see the weird workings of the NFL and other schools opening up slots. I mean, there's even the theory that Texas A&M might lose their defensive coordinator as well. So this might be, Brandon, the most fluid January news cycle for Georgia football history.
Obviously, DogNation.com will be all over it here on Before the Hedges, presented by Kroger. We love to give away a $50 Kroger How About Them Groceries gift card. I like Don Williams' question with the defensive coordinator. Would you mind if we gave it to Don here today?
Don Williams.
Don Williams, congratulations. You'll be our $50 Kroger How About Them Groceries gift card winner. Jeff, I know you've got a lot of great stuff to come in the days ahead at DogNation.com. Cannot wait to read it from you.
Busy month. Hey, everybody, read us up. Get on that forum. And we'll cover everything 9 ways to Sunday.
I'll also see you tomorrow morning at 10 a.m. for Dog Nation Daily Live. We'll have more on the Jim Chaney situation, what's next for Georgia in that regard, and we'll continue to follow the process as we head towards National Signing Day coming up in February. Great stuff. Thanks for being with us here today Before the Hedges, presented by Kroger. We'll look forward to seeing you again next Wednesday at this same time and throughout the week on all the various Dog Nation channels, online and on video. Have a great day, everybody.